And here she comes down the stairs to the basement. Brandy Mabra joins us. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Joe? Thank you so much for having me today.
I'm so happy that you're here with us because I think your story is so inspirational and you help so many people get what they want out of life. And, we spend so much time, well, as you know as well as anybody, Brandy, we spend a lot of time serving other people, doing other people's things, and never really chasing our own goals. And I think at one point it sounds like that was you, but that's not you anymore.
No. I've been through some things. And so that's definitely not where I'm at this point in my life. I am in a great place. And I couldn't have said that even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, even sometimes with life, just even a few years ago. So every day is different. Every day gives a new opportunity to make a difference, to make a change. But I'm really excited where I'm at today, and I'm so excited about what the future's got in store as well. So, yeah.
Well, let's go back to the dark times, not to make you shake or cry at the beginning of the interview. But at one point, you were bankrupt. Is that true?
It's so true. Yes, it's so true. I was bankrupt with a baby and not too sure on what I was going to be able to do. I was making, maybe about $14 an hour at the time, and was in a place where I had a choice of what I was going to do, either step up and not give my son the same life that I grew up with, or continue to go down the path of, filing bankruptcy. And I chose to go after something more so I could show him something more. And I've been on that path ever since.
Can I ask you about that? Most people I interview have this darkest time that they remember. Like I remember, and, stackers are going to roll their eyes when they hear me say this again, but I ran out of gas. I was advising other people about their money. I had no money. I had no credit. I'm digging in the seats of my minivan for pennies. And that was my low point. Do you remember your low point and kind of where you were when you said things have to change?
Yes, I was actually in the courtroom, for my bankruptcy trial. That is when I decided that things had to change. At that point in time, my son, he was almost 1 year old, and he was looking to me, only me. His father at the time wasn't doing much. And so I had to decide on what to do. So at that moment, I knew something had to change, something had to give. And I had to look at my career. I had to look at the amount of money I was making. I had to look at me as a person. And even at that time, I was staying with my sister in Ohio and not having my own place. There was a point of where just depression, not even being able to give him a bath. Like she would have to help me give him a bath. And so there's just a lot of moments where I think about where I could have chosen to just let that situation break me, but I had to take responsibility because some of it was of my own doing. It was not exactly having the best money habits or not thinking about my future and taking that completely seriously, testing things out. And so I think when you have someone who is looking to you to be fed, then that can give you a different perspective on things. And so that's exactly what happened. But I remember just sitting in the courtroom, like I never want to go through anything like this ever again in life.
You talk so much about mindset now, and I'm sure that has to be the center point of where that kind of comes from. Like mindset is everything. But tactically, at that point, what did you do first though, Brandy? Like tactically, what did you change? Did you quit your job and get a different job? Did you take classes? What did you do?
I thought about how I could make more money, and that is ultimately what it was. I know that there's a school of thought where you should cut back and do things differently. Maybe we should stop at Walmart instead of, stopping someplace else. But I just thought, if my son is going to want things, he's going to want a pair of Jordans. He's going to want to go on vacations. He's going to want to have a nice home. What do I need to do in order to do that? So I started looking at my experience when it came to my career. I had a bachelor's degree, went to college. The amount of money I was making, though, wasn't very much. So at that point in time, like I said, I was making between $14, maybe $16 an hour. And I needed more. So I started looking at if I needed to go back to school to enhance my education. I started looking at my experience when it came to my resume. And I had picked up some management type experience, some professional experience that I could actually put on a resume. And I chose to go with that. And then I started applying for bigger jobs and just looking at the opportunity that I had based on what experience I did have. And I went from there. And then also I moved from Ohio to North Carolina and made a big Made a big move there too.
I want to ask you about that in a second, but I want to focus first on finding more money, because I think that's so powerful that so many people just want to go cheaper with their life. And I love this quote, you can't shrink your way to greatness, right? You have to at some point go after more. And my understanding then, Brandy, at that moment, like you didn't just go bigger, you began climbing the ladder fairly quickly.
Yes, I did. So I took that experience that I had, and what I even gained that experience from was starting an internship program. The company that I worked for at the time, we needed help. And so I was like, let me go ahead and bring in some interns. And so part of the deal was that I would help manage them. And I took all of that experience. I took difficult conversations that I had, the evaluations that I did, and I formulated a nice management resume, and I went after management careers. So when I ended up moving, those were the only type of positions that I was applying for. If it didn't have manager, coordinator, supervisor in it, I wasn't going to do it because I already knew that wasn't going to help me, and I needed more money.
We see statistics all the time that people have trouble asking for raises. People have trouble asking for money. Women have statistically have more problems with that than men. They don't want to rock the boat. Women of color, even more so, have trouble with that. How were you able to negotiate more money? And tell me about kind of the courage it took to do that.
Well, here's the thing. When it comes to the salary negotiation, looking back, I actually shortchanged myself.
Oh.
But considering I had added maybe a $25,000 additional year over year. So to me at the time, that was like, oh, I've done a really great job.
Right. That's like $1 bajillion.
Exactly. But as I got further into my career, I started to realize that the salary negotiation piece was missing, and that I needed to go after more like six figures, especially once I started to climb up the corporate ladder. And so I started to renegotiate those types of salaries. But it's big. I mean, and to your point, when it comes to women of color, Black women, when it comes to just women in general, we have a really hard time going after bigger careers. We have a really hard time asking for more money. Or even one of the things too is that after I took that first management job, I went back and asked for more money once I started to do more research and things. And so I had those conversations and even threatened to leave. And, told him like I found another job that's going to pay me more money. And so those were the types of conversations that I had to get brave enough to have. And so I've kind of been on that track ever since.
But it sounded like strategically, and back to tactics again, you brought numbers, you brought data, you didn't go in emotionally. You brought reams of ideas and numbers with you to make that case.
Oh, absolutely. And I even brought in another job offer that I had received saying that they were going to pay me X amount of dollars.
But is that hard? And not to cut you off, but is that hard? Because I sometimes think about that tactic, and I'm sure you must have at the time too, that to some degree your boss then goes, well, is she really on the team? Like, even if they keep you, they think, is she really on the team? Because she always seems to be looking elsewhere.
I didn't have that concern. I mean, at the end of the day, I needed to do what was best for me and my son. And that was my mindset. And so even if they said, you know what, we're not going to play around with this. If you want to go to a different place, then actually the position that I was going to be an upward move anyway. I just really liked where I was. And that was the argument. I like it here. I enjoy working with you. This is a really great opportunity. What can we do to make it work? If not, then here's this other. Yes. So it wasn't presented as a threat. It was presented more as but hey, I want to stay, but please help me help you. Right. Exactly. That Jerry Maguire, help me help you. You got to show me the money though. You got to show me the money. I forgot that's the very next line too. Sometimes for people, we talk about people need a change, and you not only had that change in money, but you also had to change your surroundings. And so you moved from Ohio to Charlotte. Tell me about how that changed you, and tell me when you coach people as well. Do you advise people to do that often? Because that can be hugely disruptive. I think everybody has to do what's best for them. For me at the time, there wasn't a lot of opportunity around me. So I talked about how I was applying for manager jobs, supervisor jobs, coordinator jobs. And so when I started looking in Charlotte, the opportunity there was it was greater. There was more jobs. There was more, just from the city atmosphere, from the fact that it was growing, there was just more opportunity. So I went ahead and took a chance and I moved with my last paycheck and a rental car because I lost my car in the bankruptcy. And me and my son, and we came and, I had no furniture. We had our luggage. And thinking back on it, it was just like, that was kind of crazy. That was a crazy thing to do. But if I hadn't done it, I probably wouldn't even be talking to you today. So I would never advise anyone to do it. But if somebody were to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, I wouldn't talk them out of it. I would just ask them, why are you thinking this? What's the gain? And there were more pros than cons for me not to move and to really go forward with it, that I knew that it was going to work out. And then at the end of the day, you have to bet on yourself for sure. And so I knew that I could make something of it if I did it. So
I absolutely love it. This monster pivot, and it's got to make you, I don't know. I feel like you look around at your surroundings in Ohio and you're like, this is a place that wasn't great for me. And to have different walls, just different walls, a different atmosphere, I think is, I don't know. It's so much, feels like so much of the battle there. So you make your way up into the C-suite. You're making well into 6-figure money. Then Brandy has this other huge pivot, yes. Which is, and I heard you say this on other interviews, that burnout is real, and you warn CEOs about burnout and about not getting burnout. But you make this pivot to now instead work for yourself. So you finally have the income that you want. You've got the lifestyle you want, and you say, forget this, and you pivot again. Tell me about where you were when you made that change.
Oh, burned out. No, I got tired. What I realized is I was being hired because of the skill set that I had obtained. And there were to restructure teams, restructure processes, workflows, all of these things. And I started to realize how much money I was making someone else compared to me making that same amount of money. And so specifically, there was a company that I worked for, and I was hired specifically to help them grow it so they could sell it for private equity. And so, it's almost like the flip model. And when I realized how much money the people who I was doing a lot of the lay work, I was getting called, 5 o'clock in the morning, all the way up to 8 o'clock at night. I was driving all over the state of North Carolina, all of this. And I realized that they were going to be making millions of dollars. And even though I have this great, 6-figure salary, it was awesome. I was killing myself for it. I was like, there has to be an easier way. I'm doing something wrong. So I started to take a step back and started to think about, what did I really want? I enjoyed the management part of it. I enjoyed the business building part of it. I enjoyed just the restructuring part of it from a career standpoint. But I just knew there was something more. And I wanted to really be able just to call my own shots, to be able to help more people. And then along the way, even as I was building in my career, there was always people asking me, how are you doing this? How are you able to, get these high level jobs? How are you even able to make 6 figures? How did you turn this around? And so I've always had little mentees along the way and things. And so I've found out about, how I could really start my own business coaching and consulting business. And I've been on that track, since then, and I wouldn't change it. And, the pivot that you're speaking of leaving all of that, it's taken some time. So I took a consulting role working with a different type of company, working with hospital systems and reworking their operations. And so that gave me a skill set from a consulting standpoint, how to go in, help fix things, how to look at things objectively, how to work with different types of teams. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Did you already at that point, did you know when you took that role, that more consulting role, that this was a path now that you were on to working for yourself? Okay.
Yes, I did. And I had always talked about it, like just with different conversations. I think I want to start my own business. I think I want to do something different. I had looked at different franchise opportunities, just something, because I just knew I was selling myself short. The same way that I felt in Ohio was the exact same place that I was feeling, exact same feelings. I was selling myself short and I could do so much more. And so I followed that. And so with the consulting role, it again allowed me to have an additional skill set. And with that, I got the taste of it and I wanted more of it. So I decided to go full time into my business and do full time consulting and coaching that way.
I love that, though. And I don't want to let that go for everybody listening, that you don't have to completely jump off the diving board into the deep end of the pool. You can begin to surround yourself with people that are doing what you want to do and have some guardrails. It really feels like you had some nice guardrails. But when you went to work for yourself, did you have clients already in hand, or did you put out the shingle and then go, man, I'm hoping? You did have clients in hand.
I did. I had worked on my business. And so really the money I was getting from the consulting piece was almost my nest egg and allowed for me to do things that you need in order to build a business. So that was my stream of capital, if you want to look at it that way. It's the best thing that I could have done. The other thing, too, is that the consulting company I was working for, they started to catch on to the fact that I was building a business. And so there was different conversations surrounding that. And so it eventually just came to the point where I had to decide, what do I want to do? Do I want to go ahead and go forward with my own business and create my 7-figure business, to get the millions that I deserve? Or do I want to continue down this path where I'm making, to your point, a really well 6-figure salary? And it feels so good in the process of it, because just to be able to make the more impact, to help the clients that I'm helping, I wouldn't have it any other way.
What's funny when you say you wouldn't have it any other way is that everybody's afraid, as you know, of going down the wrong path. It took me a year to start a podcast because I couldn't figure out how to get you and I talking into everybody's iPhone so they could hear me, or Android device. I had no idea how to do that. And it turns out it's just some company out there that does it. It's the easiest thing. But we let this fear of failure get between us and success, Brandy, as you well know, when you coach people. But you didn't knock it out of the park at first. My understanding is you went into one type of coaching and then had to pivot again because it wasn't 100% on.
Yes, exactly. I started out in career coaching because, again, I was telling you about just some of the mentees that I had worked with. They always ask, how are you able to do this? How are you able to move through your career? How are you able to make this kind of money? What are you doing? And so I thought okay, I can help with that. So I'll help people make 6-figure salaries. That's what I'll do. And once I got into it, people were asking me about how do I create a resume and how do I interview and
you're poking your eye out.
Right. How do I do LinkedIn? And I'm like, this is not my cup of tea. I can tell you, just, I don't know. I don't want to write a resume. People are sending me, asking me things, and I just know. And what I realized was my business management and leadership, and that was the golden nugget. And that's the conversation that I enjoy talking about the most. And so I made another pivot and decided, I was sitting there let me just try this out. Let me just go ahead and see. So I created a program called Savvy Foundations right there, posted about it and said, I'll teach you how to market, operations, how to build a team, how to hire, all of those things. And I've been on that track ever since.
Well, I love that because you know what? I'd rather be 80% right, which you were. Mm-hmm. You're 80% right and be moving. And then because I think you also learn from moving. It sounds like you learned from moving.
Yeah.
You now have a structure with Savvy Clover that my understanding is it's almost mastermindy, right? You're coaching, but also people are working as a group with each other. Tell me about the value of the mastermind piece, because it seems to me like you could be just one-on-one consulting. How is a mastermind more powerful for people?
I always say I don't want anyone to be at the mercy of my experience. I think that there's so much gold in all of our experiences, our diversity, our backgrounds, things that we've come from, things that we've overcome, ideas. And so it's nice to have a group where I'm not always the one who has to coach. I'm not always the one who has to come up with the ideas. I'm not always the one who has to come up with the strategy. And there's a lot of times where my clients are coaching each other. They're doing, because they all have different types of skill sets and trying out different things. And so it's just magic just to watch everyone just get involved and to brainstorm, and together we're furthering our businesses, our lives, and and just going after more. And it's not all depending on me. So I love one-on-one work because that is a component of it, just from a consulting standpoint and a strategy standpoint. But at the same time, there's a lot of times where during some of the calls, I'm not even talking, and I allow for that. So it's amazing.
But that is powerful. It's powerful to be in a community like pack hunting, people all working together toward the same goal. But you have very definite pillars that you work people through inside of that. Yes. I don't want people to get the wrong impression. This isn't a free-flowing conversation. You've got them working on very specific things. Where do most CEOs get it wrong? Where do you see people really need help the most, Brandy?
I would say team. It's the team. It's I feel like in the space, there's all talk about marketing, market, sell. But at some point, if you want to grow your business, if you are trying to be busy, you're going to have to hire at some point in time, and turnover costs money. And coming from my experience, I've worked for a lot of different companies where the money was coming in, but the turnover that we had was crazy. The reviews that we had were terrible. People were quitting left and right. Even us as leaders weren't happy, so when it comes down to it, it's the team building. It's the business culture that you're creating. It's more than just marketing. It's more than just sales. It's the processes that you have in place. Because when things are chaotic or not flowing the way that they should, or processes are wacky and not efficient, you lose money. And so that's where most times people get it wrong, is they're not hiring the right way, or not hiring the right type of person who's going to be a good fit for the role, or they're hiring thinking that they're able to just give people something and almost trial by fire. And that person ends up leaving, and then you're left trying to do the work again. And so when you hiring with intention, delegating with intention, knowing what you're building, having the clarity of just the business culture that you're creating, regardless of the size, because you could work for a Fortune 500 company, you could work for a small business. People are going to feel what you're building. So even if it's one client to 100 clients, millions of clients are going to feel what you're building. And so that's part of that business culture. And then if you have team members that are interacting with your customers, they're going to feel that, your customers are going to feel that. And then the people internally are going to feel it too. So I think when it comes to it, it's business culture and team where a lot of people get it wrong.
That's so funny. People focus on marketing. I mean, as I'm listening to you talk, I'm hearing people are focusing on marketing. And if you're marketing a crap product or marketing and people come in the front door and they interface with employees who aren't empowered, like that sucks. But is there a technique or something we should think about first when it comes to the team? Is there a core piece there we should begin with?
Yeah, get clarity on what you need. I find that simple things like a job description, people don't do that. They just hire somebody. I just need for you to help me schedule appointments, or I just need for you to help me, with a podcast. But you need to have a clear definition of what you want the person to do, at least starting out. And 9 to 10 chances that position is going to evolve. But start out with the clarity first before you bring them in. Know what you want them to do, compared to just hiring them and just kind of winging it. So you have to have some structure around that.
If people want more about Savvy Clover, and this has been so damn fun, Brandy, talking about your situation, where do people find more? Where do people find you?
They can definitely find me on Instagram at Savvy Clover Coaching. So SAVVYCLOVER Coaching, or they can find me on my website at www.savvyclover.com.
Awesome. And you know what? We've got you covered if you're walking the dog or commuting to work. For those of you that still commute, we'll have links to all things Brandy and Savvy Clover on our show notes page at StackyBenjamins.com. Brandy, thanks a ton for hanging out with us and talking about your own personal journey. It's just such a powerful story. Thanks for sharing it.
No, thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun.